What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Sizzling Arrow podcast. We are here with Shakia. Hey, Shakia, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. I
Awesome,
hope you are
awesome.
too.
I'm doing great, thank you. But so today's episode, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. I mean, it still kind of pertains into what we talk about on a regular basis. I mean, it's involving firearms and stuff, but we're taking a little more of a serious approach kind of as parents, I guess you could say, because this has been, we've been having a lot of issues within our schools as since pretty much January. I mean, these things have been happening all across the country, but we've been having an issue here really close to home with children taking firearms into school, along with other, social media threats and stuff like that of schools and around the area here. But, really what we're wanting to do is just kind of talk about that and talk about proper gun storage, what you can do to avoid your kids from being curious, because curiosity, like they say, curiosity killed the cat. And curiosity is going to kill some children, unfortunately, if you do not take the proper procedures and necessary training with your children if you choose to have a firearm in the house. So, it's going to be a little more serious conversation than we normally do. And I just thought it was important because I am a strong supporter of the Second Amendment and believe everyone that is able and, mentally stable should have a firearm for their protection. But when you own a firearm comes big responsibility, especially if you have children in the house. So I just want to clear up a few points with that, give my 2 cents, have Shakia give her 2 cents on it, and just have a conversation around this very serious topic that we need to, as a country, get under control. And a lot of that is going to start in the household at home because you are responsible for your children as they're in the house. So
This is a serious topic. It's definitely something to address because, kids, on top of what you said, they're curious, but they're also highly influential in, this day and age. They're battling things such as peers and social media. And sometimes, even TV can make certain things look cool, so, you're battling curiosity along with being influenced and, safety is important. So just like you said, this is an important topic and we're glad to discuss it and hopefully you guys can, take something back from it.
yeah, very good. Thank you for that. And, Shakia made a great point. Social media, kids are very influential. So, they see something on TV and they're like, oh, that looks really cool. Or, I can do that. I could look just like, Jason Bourne or, whatnot, carrying this around. And the kids need to have a understanding that these are not toys. Even, for example, when my kids, both of my kids shoot, I take them out shooting. They know what's in the safe, and that's the key point. I have a safe, so you gotta keep that stuff locked up. But
Yeah.
I mean, my kids, they know what they do. They know how they perform. They have shot them pistols, rifles. They know the damage that they can do if not taken seriously, and if they're playing around with them, they know what the consequences are with that. And they know that if they want to go shoot, all they have to do is come and ask me and we will set up a
Mhm.
date to go and do it. So there's nothing in there that is mysterious to them. It's not a mystery of what's in the safe or what they can do, because I bring them in and show them what they do, how they perform. I mean, I started with a very young age, really. My son, first time, he actually seen the gun, he was, I think, 5, maybe.
Wow.
So, yeah, he shot his first gun at 7, I think. So, but yeah,
That's
he knew,
impressive.
yeah, yeah,
I
and
was 34.
okay. Well, it's fun. My little girl, she's 8, and I took her out with I took my son and a friend of his out to the range that we have, and we did some shooting, and she shot the 22. She shot the 22 pistol. She shot the 223. So, and she actually outshot the boys, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
So, she's definitely a
Girl power.
natural. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the thing is I've shot with adults. There's certain people that I have shot with that I will never shoot with again, just because they're absolute idiots when it comes to safety. You know, classic example, shooting shotgun, they shoot and then they swing the barrel around. I mean, it's, you know, after they shoot, they swing it around. Even though that shell's been spent, you still have to treat that gun as if it's loaded. So, you know, my
See?
children, when they shoot, you know, if it the when the gun is done firing, or you
Mhm.
know, if all the ammo in the clip is spent and it locks back, they know to have it held down to the ground and then slowly bring it over and then let me take it from there. So they never point it in an unsafe direction, at least, you know, that we've experienced. You know, accidents, mistakes do happen, but you know,
Mhm.
they know the basics of it. Um, and another thing, you know, starting them off at a young age in a controlled environment is definitely key. That's what I did with my kids. And if they have, you know, toy guns like the, you know, plastic ones you get at the store,
Mhm.
we start off with that. You know, they're not allowed to point that at me. Like if
You know, that's I'm sorry.
oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that's very interesting that you mentioned that, you know, starting there. And I guess, you know, also to your point, information is key because as a parent myself, you know, I kept those things away from my son. Like he had them, and one day we were outside, and you know he was kind of playing out in the yard, and then he's kind of pointed at cars, and I'm like, no, you don't do that, of course, and
Hmm.
but I was always the one that was, don't buy him toy guns for presents, and
Yeah,
don't give him gifts, and I would take them. I was just horrified. I didn't even want him to play with the plastic ones.
yeah.
And but it's interesting that you say that because they don't know the difference.
Yeah, no, kids definitely don't know the difference now, unless they are properly introduced to them. You know, I kind of work with the way of instilling fear into them. Like if you've ever shot an AR-15, I again a big fan of those. I like those guns. They're a lot of fun. But you know, when you hold, and I wish I had one here to show you, but when you hold the when you pull the charging handle back, it pulls the bolt back. And you know, give me 1 second. Let me go grab one real quick and I will show you.
Oh, cool.
Hold
Okay.
on 1 second.
Yes.
Okay, I am back. All right. So as I was saying, I like to kind of instill a little bit of fear into the kids when I'm teaching them about guns, because they don't need to be paranoid or frightened of them, but they need to know some of the consequences that come to just dicking around with it, I guess you could say. So this right here is a typical
Oh man.
AR-15. So it is clear. I took the clip out of it. There's no shells in it. As you can see, it's empty. So
Okay.
it's just a big piece of metal. So that's what a lot of people I don't think understand, is that these, any rifle, any gun, pistol, AR-15, all it is just a big hunk of metal. Once you put the bullets in there, that's when it becomes a weapon. Okay. So what I did with my son and my daughter, I showed them this and I was like, okay, you don't mess with this. If you ever see it lying around, which they don't, but if you ever did, you see one lying around, you leave it where it's at, you grab an adult. Okay. And they had the questions of, well, why can't we just put it away? And I was like, well, if your bolts lock back like this, you see how it's locked back, and you hit
Yeah.
the wrong button and you got your finger in here, that's going to take your finger off.
Wow. I can imagine because as soon as I saw it move, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm
So, I
just
mean,
imagining my skin being pinched.
yeah, no, that thing will just pop your whole finger. Yeah. If you got your finger in there and it takes it, I mean, I'll be amazed if you don't lose your finger. But I showed them that and both of them jumped.
Like I
And
did.
yeah. And they didn't want to mess with it. But, this is one that my daughter shot. This is actually, no, this is the 350 Legend. She shot one similar to this in a 223, which is a little bit smaller.
Mhm.
But this is what I hunted with this year. My son hunted with this year. A couple of my hunters used it as well. But I mean, really, with those and kids, I mean, it's a cool looking tool. So of
Mhm.
course they're going to be curious, and they see them in movies and all this stuff. The badass heroes running around blasting stuff and saving the day and all that. So kids, it's understandable, especially boys. They
Yeah.
want to be cool, they want to fit in, and that's just, they need to know and understand that they're not toys, they're not something to be messed with. You need to have the adult supervision when you're using them, and
Mhm.
they are in no needs necessary acceptable for school.
You actually answered my next question, which was because going back to the example of me as a parent with my son and toy guns, you mentioned that they don't need to be, terrified of them or anything like that. So, and I was going to ask you, what do you think about, in my example, like parents' fear of a gun, because it's you described it perfectly. Like you need to be afraid enough to know it's not a toy. But in my example, it was almost like instilling my own fear of guns into my son. And, going off of this conversation, that's not the way to go.
Yeah, no, it definitely isn't. And at least in my opinion, and anyone that is uncomfortable, my wife's uncomfortable with them. She doesn't like them at all. Like it took years for her to get comfortable, and I don't even know if she's 100% comfortable with it, because she's still not comfortable with me taking the kids out. But she trusts me and she knows that the kids are going to be safe. But a lot of the fear, I think, in adults and guns is they don't understand the actual tool. They don't, all they see is a lot of the political push and gun active, like anti-gun activists spreading
Mhm.
fear out there. It gets sucked into their heads, and if they've never used one or grew up in that environment of having a gun in the house, I mean, they're not going to know. So knowledge is power in that situation. My recommendation to any parent that you know is afraid of guns or has any kind of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for, um reservation, I guess you could say, if there's any kind of
Okay.
reservations of the need for a firearm or anything like that, just go to your local gun range. There's ranges everywhere, and you're not going to get shot there. The range officers, some are nicer than others. A lot of the range officers are very dry, but like I said in one of the other episodes we did, High Point here in Raleigh is a great environment, especially for new shooters. And they do have classes too. There are classes that you can go to where they instruct you, show you how to do it, show you how to do everything that you need to know on loading, firing, safety, cleaning, stuff like that. But if you're afraid of a firearm and you've never used one, my recommendation is to actually go and address that fear, for one, because you never know, you may like it. But
Yeah.
at least have an idea of how they function and what they do and what they're capable of. You know, And I mean, guns range from everything, if you're brand new to it, do not, I repeat, do not go out and shoot a 300 Winchester Magnum rifle or any of those big game calibers.
Mhm.
And do not go in and shoot any like 50 caliber pistols, 45s, 10 millimeter, 44s. Those will rock your world. They kick a lot. So if you're scared and you're sitting here shaking, and then all of a sudden you hit the trigger and it goes boom like that, you're never going to pick it up again. But 22 calibers are perfect. They're about
Okay.
this big. The shell
Mhm.
is,
Mhm.
and there's very very little recoil. Honestly, I think. Well, I haven't really shot any air guns. Air guns have come a long way, but they really don't have much more of a kick than an air gun. I mean, my little girl shoots the 22 pistol, no problem, and she's 8. So
That's
22s are
awesome.
great ways to get into it.
Good to know. Knowledge is power, just as you
Yes.
said.
Yes. Yes, it is. So, but kind of going into why we're talking about this. And since January 9th, there has been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different instances of kids taking firearms to school. Um, More than half of these are middle school. There was one elementary school, which
Mhm.
parents need to be held liable for that one, both
Yeah.
middle school and elementary school. The last one was February 23rd, Millbrook High in Durham. And they found an AR-15, one of these, in a backpack of a student at a basketball game. For one, if it was fully set up like this, I mean, how are you going to fit that in a backpack without being safe?
Yeah.
Now, I can see where if you take these 2 bolts out, that'll fit in the backpack.
Okay.
But I don't think it was broken down. I think it was a full rifle, at least from what they said.
Mhm.
I don't understand how he can get through there. Nobody was paying attention, for one. So, in my opinion, with schools, especially now, because of all the craziness going on, and I think some of these things are mental health issue type things.
Mhm.
Anyone that wants to inflict harm on somebody else has something wrong in their head. So, um, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this, but the schools should have one entrance, multiple exits, but you cannot enter through those. And
Mhm.
each entrance should have a metal detector.
Good point. And there has to be some type of resolution, right?
Mhm.
You can see some things changing, like, you get alerts now, maybe a text or something like that. And I do like that, they kind of give you these levels. It's like, okay, we have a situation, and then they'll give you an update when that situation has cleared.
Yeah.
Um, I see that's kind of new, but what else? You know what I mean? I think this is important enough to have other parameters in place for safety, and
Mhm.
that is a valid thing. Like when you think about it, right? My daughter, for example, got into some trouble in middle school. That's a whole nother story for another episode. But I had to get her back into the school where they kind of tried to expel her,
Okay.
and they wanted to send her to, I guess, an alternate school. If you're really consistent with behavior problems, they have a different type of school, that they would recommend. So my point is, at this school, but she was only there for one day because I'm like, absolutely not. And I had to get her back in school and we got things situated.
Yeah.
But that school had a metal detector, you know and I even noticed growing up, it's like the alternate schools that were, I'm air quoting here, for the bad kids had metal detector.
Mm.
But you can have one here but not one at all of the other schools. That's a obviously you can't have it. So let's put those things in place. It is of course there's an increase in need. So yeah, I agree with you
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. So I might get some backlash too then.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's, and I've seen some, like, I was reading an article about, I forgot which one it was. I think it was the one that happened on February 14th. No, not 14th, February 6th. They found a unloaded gun in the student's backpack, but 2 days later, there was a shooting that happened and killed one of the students from that school and wounded another one, which was a couple blocks, I guess, away from the actual school itself. They didn't say if that was the one that they found the gun in the backpack with, and they didn't say what the like consequences for that student were or anything like that, which I understand it's minors, but specific details of the situation were not put in the article. So it's really hard to say kind of what transpired, but it just, things like that should not happen by any means. And I think if the metal detector was in the school, they would have caught it before it even went in, because apparently they searched the kid's backpack after there was a dispute with another student and found the unloaded gun. Again, unloaded gun, just a hunk of metal, but has no place in school, for one.
No.
And and where it kind of comes back into the mental aspect of things. When I was in school, and that years ago, but when I was in school, if we had a dispute with somebody, it was between you and that person. You threw a few hands, get wrestled around a little bit, and that was it. No risk, no one even thought they were going to get shot or stabbed or anything like that. You just had a scuffle, and then generally you're having a Coke after school at the cafeteria or whatever with that person that you got into a scuffle with, talking about what transpired and who whooped whose ass type thing.
Yep.
But the mentality has changed, not just in the kids, but in the people themselves, the adults, the country. I mean, it's, we don't, if there's any kind of disagreement, we want to inflict as much harm on that other person as possible, whether it's canceling them and ruining them financially and career wise, whether it's ganging up on them with a bunch of your friends and just pulverizing them, or stabbing or shooting. I mean, those are kind of the three things that happen nowadays, which is absolute. Nobody can have a single debate in this country anymore without fear of any kind of really drastic repercussions, which is terrible. And it's soaking up into our kids, and that's where we're running into these issues, because they're like, oh well, they have no idea how to handle things that don't go their way, so they resort into violence, unfortunately. At least that's my
Wow, I think that's kind of powerful what you just said. They don't know how to handle things when things don't go their way. And when you think about it, it could be, we're not, it's not like I'm a professional psychologist, but that could be the reason why there's such an increase. They're not equipped with the tools to handle it. And the only tool they're grabbing is, unfortunately, something that has been an issue in our country. They go grab the thing that they can hurt you with the most, or something they really don't understand fully. Yep. That's something to put a pin in, something to think about later, right?
Yeah. No, it's had a lot of strings of kids taking guns, especially younger kids taking guns into school, whether it's a airsoft gun, BB gun. None of these things, toys, real ones, belong in school, and that's been known since the dawn of school, really. It's a place of learning, not for a place of shooting or knives or anything like that. One of the kids that kind of struck me, he took it in, he didn't, and I can't remember which one of, so in the Wendell Middle at Wendell, North Carolina, February 14th, student took a gun unloaded into school, and they found it, confiscated it. What he told the teachers is that he didn't mean any harm to anybody. He didn't want to do anything bad. He just wanted to show his friends what he had. So again, there's the curiosity aspect of things. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I've got a gun in the house. It's cool. I want to go show my friends, to show that I got something cool in my house. My family's cool type thing. But if he would have had the proper training, if it would have been locked up, like in a safe or, in a just locked up away from the
Mm-hmm.
kid, safes are not that expensive. So if you have enough money to buy a gun, you have enough money to buy a safe. Um, but it's just a lack of training, lack of discipline in the home there, because the parent of that child should have been disciplined enough to know not to have my kid be curious about this. They need to know this hair. If I'm not willing to show them or teach them how to do it, then they don't even need to know it's in the house.
They don't need to even know where it's stored.
Yeah.
You know.
If you're not willing to bring your children into it and you choose to have a gun in the house, like Shakia said, they don't need to know it's where it's stored. They don't need to know it's in the house. But again, my firm opinion, if you have guns in the house, everyone in the house needs to know how to use it, needs to know where they are, just in case of an emergency. Like, I'm not going to be at home all the time, neither are you. And, if family's at the house, someone breaks in, they need to know where that stuff is at.
Oh, yeah.
So that's another thing, is why both of my kids know how to use it, is if I'm not home, I know somebody's going to be able to know how to stop an intruder if need be. But it's
Yeah, that's a good point. So I mentioned they don't need to know where it is, especially at such, a young age where you could go possibly, I mean, it should be locked up, should be a safe, but, if you don't have one of those, and they don't need to know where it is, if they could possibly kind of figure out how to get it. But at what age, in your opinion, do you kind of prepare them for such things? Like you said, if there's an intruder, like, someone in the home needs to know where it is, whether it's a spouse or, another adult in the home. So everyone knows where it is. But in some cases, like for me, I'm a single mom. So it's just me and my 2 kids. So in your opinion, what age do you think it's okay to let them know where it's stored? And hey, this is the protocol if there's ever an intruder. Yeah.
That's a great question. Now, I'm going to give kind of a vague answer on that. It really depends on the maturity level of the child.
Absolutely. Yes, good point.
And if they can be trusted not to get there and take it somewhere where they shouldn't, or be goofing around with their friends with it. My son's 13. Very good head on his shoulders. I know he's not going to go messing around with it. I know he's not going to take it to his friend's house. I know he's not going to bring his friends up and show him, the collection or whatever. So it really depends on the maturity of the kid. I feel confident and comfortable that if push come to shove, if he needed to get in there, I trust him to be able to do that.
Good point.
Now, I've got the dog, big dog. So if they can get past her, then I mean, I've got a lot more respect for them, even though they're still going to get shot. But I'll at least have respect while I have to do what I need to do. But not advocating for any of you sensitive listeners out there. I'm not advocating to shoot people. But if someone breaks into the house, that's the old saying, you play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
There you go.
Anyone that breaks into your house that is not invited, they should be considered an active threat, and they should be dealt with accordingly.
That brings up another point, and I hate to continue to go on tangents off of, some of our talking points here. But like you mentioned, the maturity of the kid, great point. But there's also a level of as parents, having awareness and knowing our kids, right? Because, and I take it back, and we don't have a fact checker, so I'm going to try to describe it vaguely. I don't have details, but there was a shooting instance a few months ago where the kid got the gun as a gift or something from his parents,
Hmm.
and I think they were trying to charge the parents too. There was some instance where they were trying to figure out how to charge the parents in this shooting situation that happened. And, I feel like, to your point, when do the parents notice, even at 18, that, hey, you don't need to you don't need to know where the gun is, or you don't need to play with a gun, or I need to keep the gun away from you because you could sometimes you could be displaying, anger issues, or, sometimes they can even say something like, that person at school, pissed me off and I want to do stuff. And, or,
Hmm.
sometimes they talk on social media and they say, outlandish things and text messages with friends.
Yep.
So I tie that into the parents' responsibility to be engaged with their kid. And sometimes there could be a percentage. Again, I'm not a professional, don't have a fact checker, but there could be a percentage of some of these things being prevented from a parent saying, "Okay, you're a bit unhinged. Let's do some counseling, or let me educate you a little more." Or, we know our kids if you pay enough attention. So,
Hmm.
put some parameters in place. It could look different from kid to kid, of course. You have one that's really, really mature, really smart, responsible. Then there could be one who, kind of takes things a little too lightly. So yeah, I just thought about that as you were talking. So again, sorry for the tangent.
No, you're good. That actually brings up a really good point. And I think what you're referring to is the school shooting in Michigan. Is that right?
Yes, I remember it
Yeah.
was up north, but I didn't want to be
Hmm.
wrong. So I was like,
Yeah.
you know what, I'm gonna be vague.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, and I followed that for a little bit because I tend to watch the news more than I should. But um, with that, there was a lot of warning signs with the child. Different writings, drawings, stuff like that. There were cries for help that should have been addressed and should have been noticed before. So, like you said, we need to be in tune with our children. And yes, I'm talking to all parents out there. Know what your children are doing, talk with your children, have a good relationship with them, get off these damn things.
Yes,
So,
yes,
spend quality time with them. And that's what a lot of children are looking for. I mean, not a lot, all children need attention. All children need quality time with their parents. They need to know they're loved. They need to know that they're important. They need to know what they are interested in is important. And they need to know there are consequences. This is big, big for everybody. Consequences to their actions. I mean, there are certain kids that need to be spanked like
hmm
never tomorrow, and we've come to such a soft, cuddled generation to where we don't want to discipline our kids. I don't like disciplining my kids, but there's certain times where they need to be disciplined. And,
absolutely.
they need to understand that if I do X, it's going to result into this kind of um, situation. If I do Z, this is going to get me worse. Uh, she can't help me here. What am I looking for?
Disciplinary action.
Something like that. Yeah. So my brain's not working this morning, but yeah. So you do one thing, you get certain results. You do another thing, you get less than favorable results. And they need to understand that whatever decision they make, they have to be responsible for the consequences that come across. So I think that's a lot of what we're lacking in. And some kids, I understand, they don't have the role models that they should in the home. And
hmm
sports are great for kids like that. I know there's a lot of coaches that do a really good job coaching their children, or coaching the children and showing them life lessons along with sports. So, I mean, if you have, certain family dynamic to maybe one of the parents has passed on or left or something, try to find someone that can kind of fill that void maybe a little bit, to where they have that guidance from someone you
hmm
trust, whether it's at church or sports or friends, uncles, whatever it may be. But definitely make sure they're responsible knowledgeable, kind-hearted person that can teach them and not show them wrong paths. Because there's certain people, like I've got friends
Mhm.
I would not trust with my kids at all. And I've got, family members that I wouldn't trust with my kids. They're not immediate, but I mean,
Mhm.
uncles, cousins, second cousins that I don't even introduce or, deal with them because I know that I can't trust them with
Mhm.
much of anything. So you gotta pick and choose on who it is. And I mean, you're going to hurt some people's feelings. I mean, it's what it is. I mean, unfortunately, feelings need to be hurt sometimes,
Yeah.
but you got to look at what's best for your kids, and having proper guidance and good role models in their life and being present is definitely a key part of that.
It takes a community.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I never understood that until I had kids, but um, yeah. And then I mean, yeah, I'm not perfect by any means. So we definitely have to work better on having a bigger community, but we're growing it. But I do pride myself that both of my kids are very um polite. They're very they've got a good head on their shoulders, and
Yeah.
they know the difference between right and wrong. And I mean, I couldn't ask for much more than that. I mean, they're good, and I know that they're not gonna, you know, disappoint me, and they want to make sure that I'm happy, mom's happy, and they get to do. I give them more freedom than probably they should, but as long as they don't prove me otherwise, then they're okay.
Good stuff. Proud papa.
But let me see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. So practically, we covered what to do if you have a firearm, how to kind of keep it secured. I think we covered that pretty well. um my thoughts, your thoughts on kind of helping prevent bringing these things into school.
Mhm.
um Metal detectors, 1 to 2 exits, but you'll be in the same area, have a police officer. Most schools have a officer on staff anyway. So I mean, yes, it's going to slow down a little bit. People may have to get their kids to school a little bit earlier, but if it prevents only, I mean, even if it just prevents one kid from getting hurt, it's worth it.
Yeah.
So, but what else? Was there anything else that we should hit on that? I'm
I think we covered quite a lot. I mean, we talked about different ways to prevent because, the exits, the metal detectors, that's one thing at the school, but I like that we talked about what to do even before it gets to school,
mhm.
engaging with your kids and, other ways at home, but we can prevent these things from happening. So pretty thorough in my opinion
Okay.
for our topics.
Well, there is one thing that I did want to hit on because I know we kind of went off left field when we were talking about the toy guns, but I mentioned that my kids when they were younger, they weren't allowed to like come up and like point the gun directly at me, even if it
Mhm.
was a toy gun. Now, I'm not saying that kids can't play Nerf guns or stuff like that. That's fine if they are set out. So, if you're playing Nerf guns with your kids and they know it's a game, that's fine. So you can go like cops and robbers, or the old game Cowboys and Indians, or whatever it is they're playing. My son and his friends and me and another dad, we'd play Nerf wars. So, but we set it up to where everyone knew it was a game.
Mhm.
So, this is a game. You got your Nerf gun, you got this one, and you're on this team. I'm on this team. Go, we'll play. But when I said that they weren't allowed to come and point it at me, I mean, I'm talking like if I'm sitting on the chair drinking a cup of coffee and he comes up and goes bang bang,
Mhm.
he's not allowed to do that. So, kids will be kids. I mean, I'm not talking like reprimand or smack him for that or anything like that, but just sit them down and be like, hey, buddy, I know you like your gun, you like to play with it, it's cool, but we're not in the playing atmosphere right now.
Mhm.
what you did was not right. You're not allowed to come up and point the gun at me, because technically all guns should be treated as if they're loaded and as if they're going to inflict harm. So that's, even with toy guns, you got to instill it into them early. Some people may think I take that a little too far, but it's better to take it a little bit overboard and know that they know what they're doing and know that they know the safety protocols for the guns, instead of not knowing at all. So that's the way that I did it. I'd have a conversation. He wouldn't get in trouble unless he did it again after I told him not to. Then he'd get in trouble. But have the conversation, just explain it to him, of course, in kid terms. You want to make sure that they understand what you're saying. But that way they have okay, we don't point this at anybody or we don't point this at anything that we're not intending to destroy. That's the main thing with guns. So as soon as you're pointing it down range, you should have a target in hand to where you want to shoot. So don't point it at anything you don't want to shoot. And if you're not going to shoot it, it should not have a shell in it. Those are just simple, basic rules.
Yeah. Well said. Thanks for bringing that one back.
Yeah, no problem.
Because my example did go left, but I'm glad I did bring it up because it's like I knew it. The approach was kind of maybe a little too fearful, but yes, thank you for bringing that one back.
Yeah, not a problem at all. And I'm glad that you brought up what you did, because that brought in a whole another point of things. And one other thing that I was going to kick on that, with the fearful aspect, is I have some friends of ours, great friends, love them to death. They instilled the fear into their kid, and the kid was at our house at one point and found one of the neighbor kids' BB guns lying on the ground. So he didn't touch it, but he seen it and he started bawling, ran up, and was like scared to death.
See,
so it's like I thought he seen a snake, is what I thought he seen. But then he told me what it was, and I just rolled my eyes and had to walk in the house. I was like, I'm not dealing with that. And I was like, they don't like what I have to say. But yeah, so there's extremes on both ends. So you can not do enough and then you put your kids at risk, or you can do too much and put them in a paranoid state to where they melt down whenever they hear or see or think they hear a gun shot or see a gun or any of that. So you definitely want to have kind of the middle ground to where they understand it, they have some fear towards it, and they respect it. Those are the big three.
Yep, tying it together.
Yep, of course. But the last thing that I want to mention is that I hear gun advocates say everyone should have a gun. Everybody should have a gun. It's our Second Amendment right. Everyone should have a gun. Not really. Not everybody should have a gun. There are certain people that should not be anywhere close to guns. There are certain people that should not have access to them, whether it's due to mental illness or just their personality. Certain people should not have them. I mean, of course, felons and, people with criminal records should not have them anyway, because they've proven that they can't be trusted. But people that have no common sense, or some, I mean, it's hard to gauge that, like we don't know who's got common sense and who doesn't until, they do something stupid. But mental health issues, and I'm going to get a lot of kickback from this, but honestly, a mental evaluation might be necessary to get a gun.
Good point.
And then a recheck, just like we do on our pistol permits, a recheck every 5 years. So I know there's going to be a lot of people like, oh, that's bullshit. No, I don't know. It's just a thought. It's something that I think would prevent a lot of the issues that we have of people people that shouldn't own guns owning guns. I have nothing to worry about. I'm mentally sound. I may not be in 10 years, who knows, but As of right now, I'm mentally sound. I have no issues. So I have nothing to worry about with that. But, if you want to purchase another gun, we may want to look at doing some sort of mental health check or something like that. But I mean, with that being said, I mean, that's pretty much all I've got to say on the topic. I mean, we can sit here and talk about this forever, but for the sake of time, and we don't want to beat any dead horses with this. So I think I've pretty much got everything I needed to say off my chest. I'm sure there's other things that need to be said and could be said, but if we think of those, we'll come with another episode, and hopefully we don't have to come back to another episode about this because of more situations happening in our schools.
Right. I will agree with that.
Well, Shakia, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure sitting down talking to you about these topics and spreading knowledge and opinions out to our listeners. Is there anything that you would like to add before we wrap it up for today?
Nothing from me. It was a great one.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, thank you all for listening. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and hopefully this was helpful, insightful, or, it may be frustrating for some. So make sure you leave us comments, leave us a 5-star review if you like the episode. I'm open to good and bad comments, whatever you want to put in there. Let's hear it. All right. This is definitely a touchy subject. Guns, Second Amendment, school shootings, all that is definitely a touchy subject. And the only way that we're going to come to an agreement or come to any kind of resolution is if we all work together and actually come up with some sort of solution, whether, on both sides. We have to compromise on both sides. It's not going to happen any other way. So really, we need to put our differences aside, have a grown-up conversation about this, and actually come up with some actions to make sure that our kids are safe. Okay. But anyway, check us out on socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Also, make sure you check out the website, www.sizzlingarrow.com. Pick you up some merchandise over there. We've got shirts, hats, tumblers. Haven't got the cutting boards up there yet. I'm slacking. But anyway, do that. Sign up for the membership and get the free newsletter every month, along with the recipe that comes in there. And we appreciate you all.
Yes, everyone. Until next time.
Yes. All right. Y'all take care. Thanks, Shakia. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.